Week of the pre-COP29 climate talks have wrapped up in Bonn, Germany, and the USA has thrown a spanner in the works, urging negotiators to disregard previous decisions of the COP on issues of loss and damage and instead only focus on the 2015 deal struck in Paris, known as the Paris Agreement. Well, this has upset developing countries, including Kenya, because the Paris Agreement gives every country equal responsibility in addressing climate change, despite the fact that developing countries contribute the least to the crisis. NMG sustainability editor Zainab Wandati now wraps up the week for us from Bonn.
In 2015, the world met in Paris for COP21, and at the end of that COP, an agreement was signed, which is known as the Paris Agreement, which in the language of the Climate Convention, it's known as the CMA. Now, while this agreement was seen as the world's biggest Green Deal, developing countries actually consider it a weaker agreement compared to other agreements under the Climate Convention itself, also known as the CMP in the climate language. They consider it a weaker agreement because it gives developed countries which bear the greatest responsibility for climate change, much less responsibility to the developing countries which suffer these impacts of climate change. And this is the reason that Africa has opposed the move by the USA to look at the reparations of climate change under the CMA, which is the Paris Agreement, as opposed to the convention. And Kenya says they would prefer an arrangement that is backward-looking at the convention itself, as opposed to forward-looking the Paris Agreement.
I know next week may be a very difficult week because I think the pushback that we've had over that kind of proposition from the developed country parties, they are not happy and they are going back and re-strategizing. We are also strategizing to continue pushing on. We know they have a lot of divide and rule tactics, trying to approach people individually and promising goodies here and there, but it is important. We must have good decisions and good outcomes out of these negotiations.
So as week one wraps up and the negotiators prepare for week two, there's a lot of tension in the air, and Africa feels that this request or the proposal by the USA should not be allowed to see the light of day, because the USA itself has a history of leaving the Paris Agreement. So even if this meeting accepted to look at climate reparation, look at loss and damage in terms of the Paris Agreement, there's still no guarantee that the USA will pay up, because what will happen if they decided to quit the Paris Agreement like they've done previously?